18 fresh promo pics, a sneak peek scene that'll raise an eyebrow, and a Starfleet crew that suddenly, all logic, no laughs. That's right, our humans are turning Vulcan. Let's dive into Strange New World's latest episode. Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Well, today we're talking about episode 8 of Star Trek Strange New World Season 3, 4.5 Vulcans. This is another one of these kind of quirky episodes. We've had a few quirky episodes this season, and we've got another one this week in the form of an episode that turns our normally human crew members into Vulcan crew members. We had the flip of this last season when Vulcan Spock got made into a fully fledged human, and the reverse is occurring to multiple crew members this season in this episode coming up this week. We've got some new promo photos to take a look at, as well as a sneak peek scene as well for this week's episode. We're going to run through that and see what this episode is all about. Hopefully it's a good one, because obviously in the last couple of weeks we've had from one extreme to the other. Episode 6 was fantastic, was my favourite episode of the season, but episode 7 was my least favourite episode of the season. So hopefully this episode is entertaining, but not so quirky that it turns into kind of ludicrousness, so to speak. So fingers crossed on that front. Let's check out a few of these promo images, and then we'll check out the sneak peek scene. In this first image we see Battelle and Pike in Pike's quarters. Looks like they're having a very jovial conversation here. This is obviously before Pike gets transformed into a Vulcan in this episode. The very colourful star field out the window behind them. In this image we see Pike, Uhura, Latta and Chapel all turned into Vulcans for this episode, using the Kirkovian serum that turned Spock from a fully fledged human back into a Vulcan. They've modified that, I guess, and done the reverse in this episode. Although I'm not quite sure how the serum changes hairstyles as well, because not only do our characters here have the traditional Vulcan eyebrows and pointy ears, but it also seems to have restyled all of their hair. Pike has got a very high hair, much higher than usual, which is pretty high, and obviously Uhura and Latta and Chapel hair has also been slightly restyled. So it seems like this serum is a bit multi-skilled in terms of not only changing DNA, but also hairstyles at the same time. Here are a series of shots on the bridge, which I believe is the scene after our crew members have been turned into Vulcans and they're away on the planet fulfilling their mission very quickly. And we've got number 1 in command here, overseen by Belcher from an engineering perspective in terms of what they're doing down on the planet to fulfill their mission. And we've got Ortega's here with a very smiley look on her face. I think she's happy about getting some shore leave. I'll get to why later on. In our sneak peek scene, we'll obviously get to see Belcher and Spock and Benga as well. I know that Belcher obviously gets given the serum, but it doesn't quite work on her. Maybe her lanthanite DNA doesn't react to it or something. I wonder what the reason behind that is. Looking at this photo, it makes me kind of think, why didn't they make number 1 of one of these Vulcans? It kind of feels like number 1 hasn't had as much to do this season, that she's been a little bit restrained in number 1 focused stories this season. She's sort of always been present, but we kind of haven't had any really big scenes with her. Rebecca Romaine would make an awesome Vulcan, but yeah, she obviously doesn't get to go along for the ride in this one. I know this episode is called 4.5 Vulcans, but I'm thinking maybe there could even be a 5th Vulcan in this episode, because this character here, played by Patton Oswalt, is a Vulcan character, and I believe his name is Doug. Doug isn't a particularly Vulcan name, therefore I'm almost inclined to believe he may be a lower decker or something on board the Enterprise who gets swept up in this transformation as well somehow. Because yes, Doug, not a particularly Vulcan name, so yeah, I'm guessing that this guy maybe started out being human and was transformed like the rest of the crew. That's my guess. Here's a shot in Belcher's quarters. Good to see this set being used again. We've got a bunch of our crew members here. Look like they're having a bit of a get-together. Belcher's maybe having a little bit of a chill-out session in her quarters. It looks very comfy, very cozy quarters Belcher has. Some of these shots almost look like they're not necessarily part of the episode, but more so candid photos the photographers snapped while our actors are in between takes. Particularly Spock's expression on his face here kind of looks a little bit more sort of smiley, as if it's more Heaton and less Spock. All right, let's take a look at this sneak peek scene from the episode and see what that's all on about.
I was able to jury-rig the Kirkovian serum that turned human Spock back into a Vulcan. Should be able to do the same for us, only in reverse.
So we actually get a mention of that past episode, episode 5 from season 2, which was entitled Charades. We get Nurse Chapel referencing the serum or whatever that she's using in this instance to turn our human crew members into Vulcans.
The sensory change is brief. The feeling is instantaneous. I will guide you through the sensation until you are acclimated, which should not take long. Physical adjustments follow soon after. I would suggest a deep breath. By the time you reach 3, it should be over.
I've always wondered with Star Trek what the biological long-term ramifications are about using this kind of serum and so forth on anatomy in a long-term kind of sense, because you would think something that changes your physical appearance so dramatically in such a short space of time would be quite detrimental to your physiology. I know this is a TV show, and I know for the sake of entertainment we're meant to suspend our disbelief and just kind of go along with the ride, but I think sometimes you've got to kind of ground it in some degree in science to make sure that, you know, it isn't something that's going to, you know, really, you know, that all the crew are going to come down with some sort of hideous cancerous condition or something, you know, within 5 years by manipulating your DNA quite so severely. So I've always kind of wondered, like, really, is this really a healthy course of action to do this sort of stuff? It was, you know, it always seemed like it was a bit better back in Enterprise era when they would do this kind of stuff to go on away missions, and they would just use prosthetics as opposed to complete DNA manipulation, which always seemed a bit severe to me.
1, 2, 3.
I can already tell this episode is going to be a funny one. Obviously that last episode from season 2, Charades, was a kind of a quirkier episode. And I kind of definitely getting vibes here in this episode that it's going to be one of those sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek episodes with a bit of humour wrapped up in it. These episodes are always a bit of fun, and they always maybe require just a little bit extra of suspension of disbelief, just for the sake of entertainment value.
My emotions feel
overwhelming. Oh, I cannot handle. Oh, this is too much.
A little bit of overacting maybe this episode, I'm not quite sure. But it looks quirky and entertaining. I just hope that they manage to delicately sit on that fence between entertaining and ludicrous, because it is a very fine line to walk in just terms of how much quirkiness you have and what's plausible versus what isn't. So I think when you're doing an episode like this one, it is a really delicate balance. And the differences between getting that balance right and wrong are sometimes very, very small.
You don't feel anything?
No. And to be honest, I'm a little jealous. That looks like fun.
As much as I love Pelia, I also love the way the other crew respond around her. I think there's always great interactions, not only from her character, but also, in some cases, the bouncing back that you get from other people reacting to her quirkiness. You know, it's a bit like Mbenga's line in episode 6 when he went into her quarters and he looked around and he just kind of says, her quarters are exactly what I imagined them to be. You know, Pelia is always good value, but I think the way our characters respond to her quirkiness can be equally as entertaining.
This feeling is unusual.
My perception has increased.
Everything I once found dull now seems to be
Fascinating.
Seems like it's going to be fun. I'm liking this Vulcanization of our regular characters here.
Poop.
I wonder if the serum did not work on you because you're lanthanite.
I really want to know more about the Lanthanite race. We have yet to kind of really dig deeply into any of their history, their culture, their lore and everything. Obviously we know they're a little bit quirky and a little bit flighty and everything, and they're incredibly long-lived. I would really love to see an episode that kind of digs really quite deeply into knowing just more about this race, because it is quite rare we get introduced to new races in Star Trek. So I think when we do, it's sort of, you know, really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what makes the Lanthanites tick and just learning a bit more about their history.
Honestly, I had the same problem with LSD in the 1960s and the 1990s and last July.
Pelia is a crack up. I love this character so much. I think these little moments with her being just so super quirky and the way the character is written makes me laugh out loud every time.
Since Pelia cannot become Vulcan, I can cover her part of the mission.
I suppose I can direct you from the bridge. 5 Vulcans should be more than enough down there.
4 1/2.
Spock is only half Vulcan, whereas the 4 of us
Are fully Vulcan.
Star Trek truly is one of those shows where actors get to stretch their acting muscles, you know, quite dramatically from episode to episode. Getting a chance to be Vulcans this episode, a bit like, you know, how they got to be 1970s TV people back in the holodeck episode, you know. From episode to episode where you get to quite substantially change what you do in terms of your acting performance and getting to stretch your acting muscles and everything is quite diverse on this show, probably more than any other show on TV. So I think it's always props to showing what a talented cast they have on the show like this, that the guys are able to broaden their range quite so significantly from episode to episode. And it's always fun to do so.
Is that not logical? Spock.
Indeed, it is.
Do Vulcans get pissed off? I think so. Looking at Spock's face in the end of this scene, like he's not overly impressed by the way his crewmates are suddenly treating him as like a second-class citizen because he isn't fully Vulcan. I think everybody's doing a great job to put on that Vulcan persona. There are certainly some characters, you know, like Lan, who is very sort of, you know, a bit straight-laced and down the line and very officious and everything. Hasn't got as far to stretch as some of the others in terms of their Vulcan presentation. But I think, yeah, they're all doing a great job, and this is going to be such a fun episode to watch. I can't say I'm a massive fan of the music choice for this moment in this episode. It definitely feels a little bit out of place for Star Trek. That kind of, you know, slow motion Reservoir Dogs style, you know, scene with the whole crew kind of walking in slow motion towards the camera. It's obviously been done to death in a lot of modern media. And I think it has its place, but I think it kind of almost seems a little, maybe a bit of a step too far in this episode. I can go along with the genetic manipulation to turn our crew into Vulcans, but the whole slow-mo walk thing, it maybe is just a tiny little bit of a stretch for me. It sounds like a track that would probably be more appropriately used if they were all transformed into Klingons. It's not the sort of track that you would really associate with Vulcans. I would have thought something, you know, maybe calmer, more classical perhaps, would be more of a Vulcan style of music. This music sort of denotes, you know, the group of tough badasses, but Vulcans aren't necessarily that way inclined.
Wow, your ears are so pointy.
Number 1, 4 1/2 Vulcans to beam down. Energize.
Love that we're seeing Scotty here in the transporter room. No doubt we will have somebody at some point during the season say, "Beam me up, Scotty," which they never said in original series. It became a catchphrase of Star Trek, but it was something that I don't think was ever muttered in terms of a line of dialogue in the show at any point during original series. I love the fact that Spock still seems to be quite irritated by this constant reminder that he's not fully Vulcan.
Status report. Mitchell?
They've entered the structure.
That was fast.
All areas inside the structure are secured.
Well, this will likely take a few hours. There's a very complex...
Radiation normal.
What? Already?
It appears you can't beat that Vulcan efficiency. These guys are obviously achieving their away mission objectives in far quicker time than normally would be achieved. And it'll be interesting to see just how long this transformation extends into this episode. And I'm probably most interested to see how our Vulcanized characters are going to react with their, significant others, for example. How is Pike going to be with Battelle? How is Laan going to be with Spock? How is Chapel going to be with Corby? If they are, in this Vulcanized sort of state, I think there could be some interesting dynamics in that, if that in fact happens.
Enterprise, the energy system is now repaired.
All atomic levels are nominal. The energy source is functioning perfectly.
You sound upset.
Well, yeah. They're making me look bad.
Again, how great is Pelia? It's just so awesome. And I love the fact how absolutely efficient our away team is being now that they're at Vulcan. Everybody's working to such a high level of efficiency, and they've achieved their mission in such a brief amount of time. It's kind of quite mind-boggling, and Pelia can't even comprehend how they've managed to do it quite so quickly.
We have completed the mission. You may return us to Enterprise.
Thought this would be a bit more exciting. But whatever. Hello, shore leave.
Looks like we've got the beginnings of some buffer time situations here. Maybe the crew will have some margaritas to celebrate their early finishing of their work, much like the lower deckers did when they talked about buffer time and getting things done quickly so you can relax. Ortega's obviously talking about shore leave there, but if it was Boimler and Mariner, there'd be margaritas in the quarters afterwards. Or perhaps in this case, whatever the Vulcan equivalent of a margarita is.
I haven't even broken into a sweat.
Welcome back.
I believe we will still be able to reach Permanente 3 within expected travel parameters.
I like the fact as well in this clip that we didn't get to see what they were actually doing down on the planet. They just left that to our imagination. It's almost like it works better not seeing what they're up to and just imagining them achieving everything in such a quick amount of time, in such a high level of perfection, that they've just done their job efficiently and come back in almost no time at all. Got to say, the Vulcan costumes also looking pretty cool in these in the sneak peek scene as well. I think all of our crew look very nice in their Vulcan outfits.
I'm almost disappointed not to be able to take further advantage of my temporary Vulcan abilities.
Agreed. My communication style has never been so efficient.
I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of workplace bullying in this episode for poor old Spock. You can see him being used like a pack mule, carrying all the luggage, and he's rolling his eyes at all the comments that they're making. I'm guessing there's going to be some, good moments of humour in this that are coming from Spock's, somewhat torment, I guess, by the other members of the away team. And his constant reminder of being a half Vulcan. Not that I endorse workplace bullying in any way, shape or form, but it could be an interesting dynamic for this episode.
How was the mission for you, Mr. Spock?
Ironic, because I was constantly reminded that I was logically the least Vulcan member present.
Don't worry, that's about to change.
And much like our Charades episode in season 2, I kind of feel like things maybe aren't going to change quite so soon. I think there's far too many jokes to be had at Spock's expense for them to change back to their normal selves quite so quickly. And it will be very interesting to see how this plays out throughout the course of the entire episode.
Any second now.
I get the impression that this scene is sort of very early on in the episode. It wouldn't even surprise me if some of these moments are the pre-title sequence teaser, and that we end the teaser with this revelation that maybe something isn't quite right with the serum that they've been administered with, and they're not quite turning back into humans as quickly as they thought they might.
There's Chapel. What was that subvocalization?
What do you see?
For reasons unknown, the Karkovian serum does not appear to be working. It appears that we will remain Vulcans indefinitely.
Love this sneak peek scene. So what do you guys think about 4.5 Vulcans, the upcoming next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds? Are you looking forward to it? Do you think this is going to be a good episode, or do you think you're starting to tire a little bit of the quirkiness in episodes this season? Leave your thoughts in the comment section and we'll get chatting about that. Guys, as always, be sure to check out my merch in the merch store. Plenty of cool t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and caps and everything to take advantage of. Always at very reasonable prices, and it really helps support the channel. I'll be back on Thursday, as always, for my review for episode 8, 4.5 Vulcans. I'll catch you guys then.